So good morning, everyone. Today's session is session number 5 on Central Finance. It's all about reporting. I'm Loredana, or Laurie. I'll be your host today, taking you through this session. Lovely to see you joining us today. Some are new participants, some are names that I can already recognize from the other sessions. By now, you're probably all familiar with our education sessions. We are actually towards the end. So today is all about reporting, and we have another session on the parent portal. Let's look at the content for today's session. So as I said, today is all about reporting. So all your kind of compliance reports around TILs and TIL and banking reports. We are also going to look at registers. It gives you a very good overview on what's available and what we can have kind of a helicopter view on. Then we're going to talk about statement of account. So if you have a contact or a parent or a carer that wants to know, how much do I owe? How much money have I already paid? Because I just can't remember. What can you do for that, and where you can print a statement of account? And last but not least, we're going to touch on exports and history, just for you to be aware of what's actually available and where you can, let's say, check things or sense check things. So out of these 5 points, you probably realize that the first one with the TIL and banking reports are more your compliance reports. And I know we touched upon these reports in the last session. That was all about the banking processes, so all around TILs, closing the TILs, and what you can get as reports. But we're going to just go through as a refresher so you are familiar of where you can find those reports. But before we jump straight into the content, just a couple of housekeeping items, if I may. So as per usual, for those of you that have attended before, this session is going to be on for about 45 minutes, including questions. Now, in terms of content, we probably cover about 35 to 40 minutes. And then you have the option to ask questions via the Q&A channel. And we'll keep it open for the duration of this, so for 45 minutes. And you will get the answers via email within 48 to 72 hours. So hopefully you have all received, as we've circulated already, all the questions and answers up to date. In case you can't remember everything that we're covering during these sessions, appreciate the content is all new and perhaps you're still finding your way. Just would like to reiterate the fact that we have help documentation, and that obviously we have them all made available via the Sentral Help Center. So as you log into your Sentral account, under the question mark, you'll be able to find QRGs, quick reference guides, the finance user guide, which is the whole, let's say, manual if you prefer to have everything in one resource. But also we keep on updating frequently asked questions, as well as we have YouTube videos on finance, as well as the recordings of these sessions that we are going through. So there's going to be a good source of going back and trying to cover those aspects that we've covered in the education sessions. Last but not least, you also have Logicase. Obviously, if you have questions that you can't seem to figure them out yourselves, or via any of the resources provided, and either lodging a case or calling us, we have a dedicated support line. So perhaps just make a note of that. It's 1-800-998-538, and that's option number 2. So perhaps just jot down this number and option 2. And in case you have any questions that you can't seem to find an answer for, just get in touch with us. Now, moving on to the content for today's session. So a couple of prerequisites that are obviously discussed into more detail into your onboarding session. But I just wanted to clarify the understanding that the data for the finance module is provided by the department via your SAP system. As you know, EBS Cash Desk is closing, but all the past fees and transactions, actually the whole 7 years worth of fees and transactions are available in Sentral from day one, once you have the data migrated. And going forward is Sentral Finance is synchronized with SAP on an overnight basis in the same manner as we do with synchronizing with 3PI. So let's get down to business. Let's see what we're going to cover and what our objectives are in this reporting session. We would like to allow you to understand what reports are available in Sentral. And we do appreciate that all these reports are perhaps driven by your internal policies and also compliance from a department perspective. But I think at any point in time would be good to know where you can obtain that report, and also learning how you can generate these reports. But not only just compliance reports, but as well as where do I get an overall overview on everything that has to do with finance. So we're going to drill down on key areas. Perhaps those of you that attended our banking processes session last time remember and slightly familiar with our TIL and banking reports. So I'm going to show you in our demo site where you can actually obtain those reports. So we're going to look at this session, TIL and banking reports. We're going to look at the TIL reports, the banking reports, and the end of day summary, which are obviously all these reports that can be either printed or be retrieved at any time in your finance module. So let's look at the TIL reports, and I'm going to now go into my demo site. So by now, perhaps all of you are familiar with how to navigate and how to go to finance. So I'm going to click on this waffle icon, go into finance in this module, and I'll have an overview of the module. Again, I know I might be repeating myself for those of you that have only just joined us for the first time. If you've not had the chance to look at our other recordings, you will realize that the finance module gives you a quick overview here on the menu on various options such as registers, fee creation, banking, history, and reports. On the right-hand side, you will have all the students that perhaps you have searched for and you got queries on payments of fees, on outstanding payments, and so on, as well as contacts. So anything that you search here onto the right-hand side, as well as here in the middle, you have an overview on students, contacts, and refunds. While down here, the upcoming events are all the activities that we've raised via the activities module, and that gives you a live overview of where the permissions sit and where the payments sit. So as you can see, I can definitely see that these are all the upcoming activities, and I know exactly without having to go into the activities module as to what's the status of permissions signed by permission sent by parents, as well as payments. So going back into our TIL reports, the area we're going to look into is banking. So with banking, we have here TILs, the bank deposit, and end of day summary. In terms of the TILs, perhaps you remember that in our last session, we obviously gone through the TILs, and I'm not going to repeat the process of closing or everything. But once your TILs are closed, you'd be able to go in any of the TILs that you have, let's say the front office one. And considering that I've closed all these TILs in all those dates, I will be able to have an overview of all those closed TILs, and I will also be able to generate a report. So providing that all my TILs are closed, and obviously I have the checking process ticked as well, So as you can see with these 5 tills, they're past till closing processes, and I can now generate a report. It gives me here under status the label of checked, while with this last one, it's still open. It means that it still needs to be checked by my supervisor. So at any stage, I'll be able here to come in and choose either the cash register management report or the cash register contents report. Now, at any point in time, let's go into, let's say, the cash register management report. And as you can see, at any point in time, I will be able to generate these reports. Now, you'll have to perhaps just double check your processes and try and go back onto my demo site. What I was saying about the reports is, of course, just check your processes. I know a lot of schools perhaps print these reports, but just wanted to give you the hands up that you don't necessarily need to print them in paper, unless, of course, you would like to have them printed, because at any point in time, they are available here digitally. So as you can see, I can go back to any reports from a previous till that is checked, and it's already can be generated. So they can be digitally available, and just check with your supervisor or check with your internal processes and procedures if you actually need to print and sign these reports, or of course check with the department. So we've looked at the till reports. The next one would be the bank deposit. So again, I'm not going to how we close a bank deposit, how we can create a bank deposit, because we've covered this in the last session. So if you have any questions around that, please go and look at session number 4 around banking processes. However, once you have all the bank deposits here, you will be in a position to either view the bank deposit, which opens and gives you the overview on the start date and the end date that you've created that bank deposit for, the number of batches, the banked amount, as well as which till was it drawn from, and who created it. And of course, you'll be able to generate for any of these bank deposits, any of these 3 reports. So you have a bank deposit sheet report, a discrepancy management report, or a cancelled receipts and refunds report. Let's just look at this one. Or you also have this option of all reports, which if you hit, then obviously it will give you all these 3 different reports. So it'll give you the bank deposit sheet with the same amount that we just looked at, that obviously can be printed and signed if that's required. The bank discrepancy management report, as well as the cancelled receipts and refunds report. And as I said, you can print them digitally here on your screen, or you could just go and print them on paper if that's required. Of course, something else that needs to happen once you close the till and your bank deposit. Again, something that actually I should stop just for a second, because we seem to have got this question in the previous session. Do we have to do the bank deposits on a regular basis? Well, the regular basis, or every day, the regular basis is something that you need to discuss internally and to check your process. And of course, you just need to make sure you close your tills and you bank according to whatever you do now. Our understanding from having worked with schools already that are adopting the finance module is that this varies. Some schools do a banking just once a week. Some schools do a banking on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I guess it depends on your school process. I guess it also depends on the amount of money you have in a till, and whatever is your process in terms of banking it. So you'll have to discuss that at your school executive level. Now, moving on to end of day summary. Let's look at what sort of reports we have available here. So you can see the end of day summary goes through a checking process as well. I've got all my end of day summary approved here. So this is kind of the end of my process. I can obviously view the end of day summary and who's actually created that, as well as I am in a position to go and run any of these reports. So I have an end of day summary report, the cancel receipts and refunds report, and the cancel and adjusted fees report. Or if I want all three, I can always go and print this all reports. So based on that cash transaction we had before, it gives me a report, the total amount, obviously the amount, and I can get here our delegate or the principal to sign if our process is required. So I've got the bank deposit sheet as well as the canceled receipts and refunds report. So as you can see, again, you have at the click of a button, the possibility to actually generate these reports. So going back into our slides, we have covered all the till reports that are obviously able to be retrieved under finance, banking, tills. So you've got here a list of all the reports available. Next, I'd like to talk to you about registers. While registers are not really compliance reports as such, does offer you the possibility of getting a quick overview at, let's say, a higher level. And let me show you, demonstrate what I'm referring to. So going back to our finance reports, where do we retrieve the registers? So I'm going back into finance, and we looked at banking with all those compliance reports, and now we're looking at registers. Now, what this register do is actually giving us a quick overview at the entire school level of students and contacts. But you might say, yes, but you showed us before how to look for a student when we want to retrieve fees. Yes, that's still applicable. So easily when you have a contact with somebody in the front office that is actually requiring payment of a certain excursion or some outstanding fees or so on, probably the recommended and the quickest way to retrieve that fee would be to come here and search for a student. Of course, I can search for student. In here, I can also search for contact or even for a particular fee if I have a fee number. So let's just type F. As you can see here, I can search for students, contacts, and a fee. Now, if I want to search for a student, it will drill down into just the particular student fees. Here on the left-hand side, I'll be able to see any payment requests, subsidies, if that's the case, payment and fees raised at a student level by any of the contacts. And if I scroll down all the way here to the bottom of the page, I will see any contacts, financially responsible and financially interested that are coming from SAP and are connected to this student. So they're all here. And also in terms of if there is a split of fees, that's going to appear here as well. But when we actually want to look at an overall situation and understand all the fees registered, the fee register and all the fees and payments raised, I will encourage you to come here under the registers and look at student register, which you can filter as well. So I can always maybe draw some other reports that will allow you to not drill down to a student level, but also to look at and perhaps look at, do you have or not inactive students? Do you have students that are not linked to active contacts? Do you have students that the billing responsibility does not equal to 100%, which means that perhaps you haven't finalized that split if the student is split. So you would be able to run any 1 or 2 filters that you would like. And of course, you can also search for a student's name in here. Or maybe, let's say, I want to see any students that are from a particular year. So as you can see, I can always quickly search and I can see responsibilities and so on. At the same level, I can run a contacts register. And that again gives me at a quick glance a situation of contacts. Are they split? Are they not? This is something that perhaps would be good to get familiarized yourself, especially for those families that you would like to double check that the setup has been done correctly in your onboarding process for all those split families. Do I want to search under my contacts and see only those ones with split billing responsibilities, which I do have actually here in my demo site. So let's just run a quick search. So as you can see here, I can see all my split families. Now moving on to fee register and payments register. As the name says, the fee register obviously gives you an overview of all the fees that are authorized, so have been raised, but not only. So in the fee register, again, if I want to just get at a quick glance, I can see all the transactions. So I can just filter here on all the transactions without any sort of filters. But as you can see, especially as we bring in fees that are older, the number here, it will get overwhelming very quickly. So what I'll invite you to do once you have access and have the chance to go into fee register and see how you can actually filter. So you'll be able to filter on any sort of fee run that you ran for a particular, let's say, activity. So any activity that you've created and you perhaps ran permission forms for in activities module, that will allow you to bring it here. So if I want to bring, let's say, I've got a camp here, or if I don't know exactly, I can actually search for my stage 3 camp. And if I only want to bring those fees that were authorized, so obviously they're still not paid, I can easily filter here. So as you can see, I get 64 fees in return. So obviously it's a bit more palatable list that I can look at and take other next steps, either being paid or maybe sending, publishing to portal if that hasn't been done already, or doing any sort of communication that you'd like to do just to make sure that next steps actions that you make sure that they get paid. So again, you go into fee register, you have the option of filtering here either by fee run or by an activity. If you don't know the names, you could always search both into a fee run or an activity. You can search on a billing period. You can search based on who created. Perhaps sometimes you just want to make sure that the fees were created and you want to check that. You could easily go quickly and create it by and choose the name of the user. You have the option of filtering further on contacts, preferred communication, linkage or not to portal, areas that we're going to cover in our next session, including or excluding flags, or even creation date. So the same kind of filter for fee register appears on payments register. And again, with payments, obviously, you will retrieve a list of payments that you have here either created and are authorized, or perhaps if you want to see the fees that are refunded. So just have a quick look. Appreciate that all these filters might feel a little bit too much at the moment because there are quite a lot of options. But once you have the chance to have access to the fee register and payments registers, I would definitely invite you to go and see and adjust it to your processes on a daily basis. Last but not least, we have the credits register that allows you again to go and look at unallocated, partially allocated, or fully allocated credits at an overall level. And of course, you also have the option of going at a student level and have that overview at a student level. And the same with the refunds. So let's see what are the refunds that we have, let's say, approved. I can always filter that, and I will see the refunds that are already approved and processed and what the method was used for refund and process from here on. So I'll be able to go and process, and I've approved, and that's going to be refunded via FPOST. So we have covered the registers. Again, we looked at the students registers, the contacts register, the fee and payments, as well as the credits and refund that give you an overview of not just the credits, but also the amounts that you need to refund to parents due to various situations in your school. Last but not least, we're going to look at the statement of account, which can be retrieved at a contact level. So you are perhaps in the situation where a parent walks in the front office and is requiring a printout of the statement of account. Just for you to know, the statement of account, as long as you have, or the parent, the contact has access to the portal, they have that available via the portal. We're going to look in our next session as to how does that look and how can parents even request refunds via the portal, providing they're already there. But if they rock up in the front office and they say, well, I would like a printed copy, please, all you have to do is look for the contact. So I will look here for, let's say, Mrs. Bunting. I see all the details here of my contact, as well as if she has any, well, the payments, the fees, credits, and overpayments, the same kind of breakdown as at a student level. But right here on the right-hand side, I can generate a statement of account for a, let's say, 2023. And that will generate it digitally. And of course, I have the opportunity to print. So if you're in that position, that will give you an overview of all the payments. So that's a full statement of account, as well as unallocated credit if there's any credit that's available with the printed date. So all we've done is we have gone into the contact. You just search for a contact here onto the right-hand side. You come down here and we generate a statement of account. Now, if somebody's requesting, but all you have is the student name, we could do the same. We can go to, let's say, Laura. The statement of account is obviously only driven by data, so by contact, and I need to go to the student's contact. So I'll go down here, look at who the contacts are. So let's say it was not Mr. Bunting, but it was Mrs. Bunting that wanted the contact, the statement of account. I'll click on the contact and I'll come here on the right-hand side and generate an account for Mrs. Bunting for 2023 in the same format, which I can perhaps email or send or print it out. Something else that I mentioned initially was under the finance module, we do have these tabs here that give you also an overview. There's the history as well as exports. So I'm not going to insist too much here, but just for you to know that any sort of history on any transaction that's happened in the finance module, you'll be able to come and view here. So you will get any synchronizations that are already done and completed with SAP, as well as any sort of standalone of fee and receipt or any fees from billing runs that you have run already. And last but not least, exports. So those reports that we have looked at, they are available either in a digital format or they can be printed as a PDF. However, we appreciate that you might require for your own analysis any sort of exports. So you can have a quick look here under the export tab, as this is going to export the data in a manageable format. So you'll be able to export it in CSV or Excel. So you have any sort of transactional exports. Let's say you want to export all your fees or all your payments, or if you want to export the students or the contact names, discounts, or so on. So let's look quickly at fees. All you have to do is choose the billing period and particular billing runs or not. Let's just take one because it might take a little bit of time until this is generated, and export. So as you can see, at the click of a button, we've managed to export very quickly, and it's an Excel export. So again, encouraging you to have a quick look at history, and remember that the exports are exporting things, transactions, contacts in CSV or Excel format that can be further manipulated. So going back to what we've covered today, we looked at till and banking reports and all these reports that are available, both digital and can be printed out, registers, as well as statement of account, where you can search for a contact name. And something that we also pointed out was the history, as well as the exports capability in Excel format. So that brings us to the end of the session today, but I would just like to reiterate that you can, looking at the question and answers channel, let us know if you have any questions. We'll still keep the channel open, and we are going to collate your questions and revert back by email within 48 to 72 hours. Don't forget about the additional documentation that's available via the Help Center. Of course, you could go and retrieve the finance user guide that includes everything, but also don't forget about the QRGs or the quick reference guides that we already have available in our Central Help Center. And last but not least, if you would like more of a dedicated, just your question support, don't forget about our support line, which is dedicated to finance, 1-800-998-538, and that's option number 2.